The screen's blue light burned into my vision at 2:47 a.m., my father's words floating in pixelated cruelty. Effective immediately, Mackenzie is relieved of duties for disloyalty. My hand tightened around my phone until the edges cut into my palm. Outside my loft window, the city hummed with indifferent traffic, while my professional obituary circulated to every employee, vendor, and board member my family knew. No phone call, no conversation, just digital execution. My cold coffee sat untouched on the desk, the mug still showing condensation rings from 3 hours earlier when I'd been reviewing next quarter's projections. The same projections that would now move forward without the person who'd been secretly transferring her personal savings. $3,200 every single month for 5 years to keep the vineyard's lights on. My name is Mackenzie, I'm 29, and I'm a financial strategist. This is the story of how I stopped funding other people's dreams and started living my own. Most daughters would have called their mother, sobbing, begging to understand what they'd done wrong. I took a sip of that cold coffee instead, letting the bitterness coat my tongue. Because here's what I understood that they didn't. My family didn't operate on love. They operated on image. And in their perfectly curated world of wine tastings and society galas, I was the smudge they kept trying to wipe away. My brother Tyler held the title of head winemaker at 26, handsome, charming in that effortless way that photographs well. He couldn't distinguish a Pinot from a Merlot if you switched the labels, but he could host influencers like nobody's business. He'd spend entire afternoons staging photos of himself, staring thoughtfully at grapes he'd never grown, vines he'd never pruned. I was the one in the back office with the door locked, negotiating with vendors at midnight when the company cards declined. I was the one who'd put my name, my pristine credit score, my professional reputation on every loan that kept their luxury lifestyle running. My parents, Lisa and Richard, loved owning a vineyard the way some people love owning exotic pets. They loved the prestige, the gala invitations, the envious looks from their country club friends. What they hated was the actual work, the compliance forms, the labor disputes, the relentless mathematical reality that the vineyard had been hemorrhaging money for a decade. "Fix it, Mackenzie," my father would say, already halfway out the door to his golf game. "That's what you're good at, details." So I fixed it. I fixed it by pouring $192,000 of my own money into their overdraft fees over 5 years. I fixed it by personally guaranteeing the $125,000 operating line of credit that paid their staff. I fixed it by becoming the designated agent on the state liquor license because my father's prior bankruptcy made him ineligible. They'd forgotten one crucial detail in their late-night power trip. The vineyard wasn't really theirs anymore. It was a shell company propped up entirely by my personal guarantees. Every legal document that mattered had my signature on it, not theirs. I stared at that email, relieved of duties. And something close to laughter bubbled up in my chest. The sound echoed strangely in the quiet loft. They thought they were punishing me. They thought they were cutting loose a burden. They had no idea they'd just severed the only artery keeping their world alive. I stood and walked to my closet, my hands steady as I spun the dial on the fireproof safe bolted to the floor. Inside sat a manila envelope my attorney Tracy had made me prepare 3 years ago. "Just in case," she'd said. I thought she was being paranoid. Now I realized she'd been prophetic. I spread the documents across my desk, the revocation forms, the resignation of designated agent paperwork, the legal demolition codes. Then I logged into the bank's commercial portal, the screen glowing an eerie blue in the darkness. The operating account showed negative $47,000. I navigated to the guarantor settings and stared at the Remove Liability button. My finger hovered over it for exactly 3 seconds. For 29 years, I'd believed that my utility was my value, that if I just carried enough of their weight, eventually they'd look at me and see a daughter instead of a resource. I'd thought my martyrdom was love, but that email, disloyalty, snapped something fundamental inside me. They didn't see a daughter. They saw a tool. And tools don't have feelings. Tools get used until they break, then discarded. I clicked. "Are you sure you want to revoke liability?" "Yes," I whispered. The status bar turned red. Credit facility frozen. Immediate repayment required. I didn't stop. I opened the State Liquor Board website and filed my resignation as designated agent, uploading a screenshot of my father's termination email as proof. The confirmation appeared instantly. License status suspended pending new agent appointment. 10 minutes. That's all it took to dismantle the financial spine of their empire. I hadn't stolen anything. I hadn't touched their money. I'd simply taken back my name. The silence that followed felt like the first full breath I'd taken in years. They wanted to own the business. Now they owned all of it. The debts, the liabilities, the absolute silence of a bank account they couldn't access. Good luck, Dad. By the time dawn broke through my loft windows, I'd processed the shock and was running on pure adrenaline and vindication. Morning arrived with aggressive brightness. My phone, mercifully on silent, began vibrating across the coffee table in seizure-like bursts. Mom. Stop this drama right now. Dad. Mackenzie, the bank login isn't working. We have payroll tomorrow. Fix it now. Tyler. LOL, Dad really fired you. Good luck finding another job where you can hide in a basement all day. Also, the corporate card got declined at the gas station. Unfreeze it. They still didn't understand. They were walking around the deck of the Titanic, complaining about the buffet service, completely unaware the ship had already split in half. Then my voicemail pinged. Not family. Mr. Henderson, the corporate attorney who usually only called to bill us for his golf outings. Mackenzie. His voice was stripped of its usual pompous leisure, tight and breathless. We have a catastrophic situation. The bank issued a demand for full repayment. They're saying the guarantor withdrew and the state board flagged the liquor license as inactive. Distributors are freezing shipments. Please tell me this is a glitch. Call me. I stepped onto my balcony with fresh coffee. The morning air smelled of rain and exhaust. I replayed the lawyer's panic and started laughing. A rich, genuine sound. It's fascinating watching people realize they confused status with power. My parents had spent decades thinking that because they owned the land, because they had the family crest on the bottles, because they sat at the head of the table, they were royalty. But you can't be royalty when you're renting the throne. They'd built their entire identity on a lifestyle they couldn't afford, leasing their prestige on my credit score. And when you rent your power, the landlord can always change the locks. I imagine the scene at the Vineyard office. The declined cards, the frozen screens, the slow dawning realization on my father's face that he couldn't just order the bank to respect him. I didn't answer the lawyer, I didn't answer my mother, I didn't answer Tyler. I took a sip of coffee. I wasn't the fixer anymore. I was the audience. My phone buzzed again. Tracy this time. I picked up immediately. Mackenzie, are you sitting down? Her voice was low and serious. I'm fine, Tracy. What is it? Did they file an injunction? No. I was filing your formal dissociation paperwork with the Secretary of State and triggered a flag in the system. There was a pending lien search on the Vineyard entities. She paused. Mackenzie, I pulled the filings. There's a draft contract. Your parents have been in secret negotiations for 6 months to sell the Vineyard to a global conglomerate. The purchase price is listed at $8 million. The world tilted. $8 million. They were selling. But here's the thing, Tracy continued, her voice turning to ice. The deal structure lists you as key personnel. The buyers made the sale contingent on you staying for 2 years as transition manager. But the payout schedule? 100% to Richard and Lisa. 0 equity for you. 0 bonus. Just a salary contract. I sat very still as the final piece clicked into place. The email firing me wasn't a tantrum. It was strategy. They'd probably planned to rehire me as a consultant once the deal closed, stripping me of any claim to the family business while forcing me to run it for their new bosses. They were going to sell the empire I'd built, pocket $8 million, and leave me with a job description and a pat on the head. It wasn't just ingratitude. It was theft. Calculated, cold-blooded theft of every sacrifice I'd made. Any lingering guilt about freezing those accounts evaporated instantly. Tracy, I said, my voice calm and cold, do we have contact information for the buyer's legal team? Right here. Send them a material change notice. Inform them that the key personnel listed in their due diligence has been terminated for disloyalty. Inform them the liquor license is void and operating capital is frozen. Attach my father's email as proof. I could hear Tracy's smile through the phone. With pleasure. If I don't get a seat at the table, I said, nobody eats. They wanted to sell my work. They wanted to cash out on my sweat. They were about to discover that without me, they weren't selling a business. They were selling a liability. The deal was dead before the ink dried. 4 days later, I received a text from my mother. The annual Harvest Gala was still scheduled for that Saturday evening, and vendors were demanding proof of liquor license reinstatement before they'd even show up. I knew this would be chaos, but I wanted to collect my personal belongings from the office before they changed the locks entirely. 7 p.m. found me pulling onto the gravel driveway as the gala officially began. The air smelled like panic. No valet. Catering trucks parked haphazardly on the lawn, drivers standing in angry clusters with crossed arms. I walked past them, keeping my head high. I wasn't here to save the party. I was here to collect the personal files and family photos I'd left in my office. The main tasting room looked like a disaster zone. The bar was taped off with yellow caution tape, the result of operating without a license. Guests in tuxedos and evening gowns stood holding empty glasses, looking confused and irritated. The jazz band was packing up their instruments. I slipped through the crowd toward the back offices. I made it as far as the barrel room before they cornered me. Mackenzie. My father stepped from the shadows between fermentation tanks. He looked 10 years older than yesterday. His tie was crooked, his face flushed with stress and scotch. My mother appeared behind him, her perfect makeup cracking around her eyes. "You have to stop this," Richard hissed, his voice echoing against the oak barrels. "The caterers are threatening to leave. The band walked out. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" "I'm not doing anything," I said calmly. "I'm just an ex-employee collecting her things." "We're losing everything." My mother grabbed my arm, her grip desperate. "The bank called. The merger. The buyers pulled out an hour ago. They said the business is toxic. Fix it, Mackenzie. Call them. Tell them it was a mistake. We're family." I looked at her hand on my arm, the same hand that had typed that email at 2 a.m. I gently, firmly removed it. I reached into my bag and pulled out the crumpled merger contract Tracy had found. I held it up. The color drained from my father's face. "I know about the $8 million, Dad," I said quietly. My voice cut through the room. "I know you were selling the vineyard. I know you negotiated a deal that cut me out completely after I spent 5 years saving your legacy. You weren't protecting the family. You were liquidating me." Richard opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked small, defeated, a king without a kingdom. "You wanted to run the business," I said, stepping back. "You wanted to be the boss. Well, congratulations. Payroll's due tomorrow, the mortgage is due Monday, and the liquor license is gone." I turned toward the door. "Mackenzie, you can't leave us like this," my mother wailed. "We don't know how to run this place." I stopped at the threshold and looked back one last time. "I know," I said. "You fired the only person who did." I walked out into the cool night air, leaving them in the silence of the cellar, surrounded by thousands of gallons of wine they couldn't sell and a legacy they'd destroyed with their own greed. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It was a slow, agonizing slide that I watched unfold over the following months through legal filings and occasional messages from Tracy. The bank foreclosed on the vineyard inventory within 30 days. The merger remained dead, buried under the material change I'd triggered. Tyler quit the moment the first paycheck bounced. His loyalty had a very specific dollar value. He moved back in with our parents temporarily, then disappeared to Los Angeles chasing influencer opportunities. Last I heard through mutual acquaintances, he was bartending and still posting carefully filtered photos that suggested a lifestyle he couldn't afford. Mr. Henderson, the corporate attorney, sent me one final email 3 weeks after the confrontation. It was brief. "I've withdrawn from representation. Best of luck to you, Mackenzie. You deserved better." I never heard from him again. My parents were forced to sell the estate in pieces. The land went to a developer. The equipment went to competitors at auction. The legacy they'd worshipped was dismantled piece by piece. 6 months after I walked away, they finalized the sale of the remaining property and moved to a small condo in Scottsdale, Arizona, where the cost of living was lower and they could fade into anonymity. I didn't watch it happen up close. I watched from a distance, like reading about a storm in another country. I was busy. I'd landed a position as CFO for a tech startup in the city. They hired me not because of my last name, but because of my skills. They gave me a signing bonus, stock options, and something I'd never had before. Respect. It's New Year's Eve now. My new apartment is airy and quiet. No frantic emails. No crises manufactured by narcissists. On my counter sits a single bottle of wine, a vintage from 5 years ago, the first blend I ever personally oversaw. I took it from the cellar that night. It's the only thing I kept. I pour a glass, the deep red liquid catching the light of fireworks exploding over the city skyline. I think about my parents. They still blame me. They tell anyone who'll listen that I stole their retirement. I've heard the stories through the grapevine, how I'm the ungrateful daughter who destroyed the family business out of spite. Let them talk. I know the truth. We're taught that family is a biological imperative, a bond that must be preserved at the cost of our own souls. But that's a lie. Family isn't blood. It's behavior. It's respect. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to amputate the limb that's poisoning the rest of the body. Walking away wasn't an act of war. It was an act of self-preservation. I didn't lose a family. I found a future. I raise my glass to the empty room, to the silence, to the woman I became in the fire. To the family we choose, I whisper, and the peace we earn. I take a sip. It tastes like freedom. If you've ever had to walk away to save yourself, drop a comment below. And if you believe respect is the only currency that matters, share this story. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.